The Chicago River, a ribbon of murky green against the towering steel and glass of the city, had always held a morbid fascination for Leo, not for its iconic architectural tours, but for the dark whispers of its past. He ran Urban Echoes, a small, barely legal YouTube channel dedicated to exploring forgotten city infrastructure, abandoned tunnels, hidden basements, and the secret arteries that pulsed beneath Chicago's vibrant surface. His latest obsession, the legendary unmapped network of utility tunnels said to run directly beneath the riverbed. His crew for this ill-advised adventure consisted of Maya, a fearless drone pilot and tech whiz, and Ben, a former city engineer, with an encyclopedic knowledge of Chicago's subterranean secrets, though he often dismissed Leo's more outlandish theories with a gruff scoff. Tonight, however, even Ben seemed a little on edge. The air near the river was unusually still, heavy with the metallic tang of the water and something else. A faint, almost imperceptible sweetness, like decaying flowers. They found their entry point in a forgotten, rusted grate, disguised beneath. A crumbling bridge abutment, not far from where the river made its famous turn. The descent was steep into a narrow, damp passage that quickly gave way to a larger, brick-lined tunnel. The air grew colder, and the distant rumble of city traffic above faded, replaced by the constant rhythmic sloshing of water. "This isn't on any city map, Leo," Ben muttered, his flashlight beam cutting through the thick dust and cobwebs. "This is old, pre-fire old maybe." As they ventured deeper, the tunnel opened into a cavernous, forgotten chamber. The air here was thick, heavy, and the sweet decaying smell intensified. The constant sloshing sound echoed off unseen walls. Maya's drone, an agile little quadcopter, whirred to life, its bright LED lights piercing the gloom. The camera feed flickered onto Leo's tablet, revealing a breathtaking and terrifying sight. Before them stretched an immense, flooded tunnel, its arching brickwork disappearing into the black, unlit distance. The water was dark, unnaturally still, reflecting the drone's lights like a shattered mirror. And within the water, something shifted. Not fish, not debris. Something far larger, far more purposeful. "What the hell is that?" Ben breathed, his voice barely a whisper. The drone dipped lower, closer to the water. The sweet, decaying scent became overwhelming, almost cloying, and something new joined it, a faint, coppery smell. Then the drone's camera picked it up, just below the surface. Barely discernible in the murky water was a human hand, pale, distorted, but unmistakably a hand, reaching upwards, then slowly, eerily, retracting back into the darkness. A low, guttural gurgle rose from the unseen depths, a sound that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. It wasn't the sound of rushing water, but something choking, something breathing. Suddenly, a massive rusted anchor emerged from the water ahead, covered in what looked like centuries of grime and thick black algae. It was impossibly large, ancient, and seemed to hum with a faint internal vibration. It wasn't just an artifact. It felt like a monument, a marker. And as it silently ascended from the depths, dripping with the river's dark secrets, a wave of profound cold washed over them, carrying with it a faint, mournful whisper from the churning darkness below. We remember every drop, every soul. Leo, usually fearless, felt a prickle of genuine terror. This wasn't just urban exploration. They had stumbled upon something ancient, something that still hungered beneath the heart of Chicago. And the river, they realized, wasn't just a waterway. It was a tomb. The colossal anchor, dripping river water and reeking of decay, hung suspended in the vast chamber, its rusted chains disappearing upwards into the unseen ceiling. It was a stark, horrifying monument in the heart of forgotten Chicago. The faint whisper that had accompanied its ascent grew louder, evolving from a collective murmur to a distinct, almost melodic chant, though the words remained just beyond comprehension, like a song sung through water. "We need to get out of here," Maya whispered, her voice tight with fear, pulling her drone back sharply. The camera feed on Leo's tablet showed the drone shaking, its propellers fighting against an unseen current in the air. "Hold on, Maya!" Leo breathed, mesmerized by the anchor. "Look!" He pointed his own flashlight beam towards the base of the colossal chain. What he saw made his blood run cold. Clinging to the links, barely visible in the murky light, were what looked like dozens of human figures. They were still, covered in the same black algae and grime as the anchor, their forms distorted by the water, their features indistinct. They seemed to be part of the chain, absorbed into its ancient metal. Ben, usually skeptical, gagged, stumbling backward. "Oh God, the drowned! It's pulling them up." As he spoke, the water around the anchor began to churn, not violently, but with a slow, deliberate swirl. The sweet, cloying scent became unbearable, stinging their nostrils, making their eyes water. The coppery tang intensified, turning metallic and raw. Suddenly, a series of lights flickered on in the distance, further down the flooded tunnel, mimicking the spacing of old-fashioned streetlights. They were dim, pulsing with a sickly green glow, cutting through the profound darkness. As the lights illuminated the tunnel, a horrifying sight was revealed. The tunnel wasn't just flooded. It was lined with more anchors, smaller than the colossal one before them, but equally ancient and grime-covered, each with its own chain disappearing into the watery depths. and from the water around each anchor, human forms began to rise. Not all the way, but just to the surface, their pale faces breaking the calm. They were men, women, children, their eyes hollow, their mouths agape in silent screams. Their clothes, though tattered and waterlogged, spanned decades, even centuries. Old-fashioned dresses, work overalls, suits, even modern streetwear. They bobbed listlessly, a spectral congregation of the lost, stretching endlessly down the illuminated tunnel. The chanting from the water grew louder, a chilling symphony of sorrow and longing. Join us. The current flows. Eternal rest. It was no longer just about remembering. It was an invitation, a sharp, metallic snap. Echoed through the chamber. Leo looked up. One of the thick, rusted links on the main anchor's chain, directly above them, vibrated violently. A thin, hair-like filament of pulsing reddish light, similar to what Ilara had described in her possessed garden, briefly flickered around the link before vanishing. Then, the anchor began to descend slowly, inexorably, pulling its grotesque burden of human forms back into the black water. As it sank, the chanting intensified, reaching a crescendo that vibrated through the very bedrock. The lights down the tunnel flickered as if the energy was being drawn away. "It's feeding," Leo whispered, a chilling realization dawning on him. This isn't just a tomb, it's a stomach, and it's still hungry. As the last of the figures vanished beneath the murky surface, a single clear voice rose above the dying echoes, speaking not in whispers, but in a distinct, haunting tone. It was a woman's voice, full of despair and a chilling calm. "Don't fight. The current, it always wins." The voice seemed to come from directly behind them. They spun around, flashlights sweeping the empty brick walls of the passage they had entered from. Nothing. Only the profound silence of the deep. But the air around them was heavy, cloying, and the coppery smell was stronger than ever. It smelled like fresh, cold blood. The unseen voice, calm and laced with despair, hung in the frigid air, a chilling pronouncement. It had come from behind them, from the narrow, brick-lined passage they had entered through. Leo, Maya, and Ben exchanged terrified glances, their flashlights scanning the shadows. The oppressive silence that followed the receding anchor and the dying chant was almost worse than the noise. "Who's there?" Leo called out, his voice shaking. Only the drip of water and the distant, rhythmic sloshing answered him. The coppery stench was now thick, making him gag. Ben, ever the practical one, despite his terror, pointed his light at the ground. A faint, glistening trail of reddish-brown fluid snaked across the dusty brick floor, leading from the mouth of the passage deeper into the chamber where they stood. It was wet, fresh, Someone's here, Ben muttered, his eyes wide. Or something. Suddenly, the drone, which Maya had been clutching, began to whir violently in her hands. Its internal lights, usually a steady white, flickered a frantic red. On Leo's tablet, the camera feed distorted, glitching with static. But through the interference, a horrifying image appeared. A close-up, fish-eye view of a face, not distinct, but undeniably human, pale and bloated, its eyes dark, vacant holes. It was pressed right against the drone's lens, distorted, as if seen through thick, swirling water. A piercing scream erupted from Maya. She flung the drone away from her, sending it crashing against the brick wall. It fell to the ground, its lights dying, the screen on Leo's tablet going black. It was inside the drone. Maya sobbed, shrinking back against Ben. The sweet, decaying scent intensified, so sickeningly potent that Leo felt a wave of nausea. From the passage behind them, a wet, dragging sound began, growing closer. Squish, drag, squish, drag. It was too heavy to be a rat, too slow to be a human. "Run!" Ben hissed, pulling Maya with him towards the entrance of the flooded tunnel, away from the dragging sound. "We have to go back to the grate." They scrambled through the chamber, past the now darkened pool where the anchor had vanished. As they reached the mouth of the long, flooded tunnel, a new sound echoed from its depths. A chorus of low, guttural gurgles, followed by a faint, desperate tapping like fingernails on glass from beneath the murky water. The sickly green lights further down the tunnel began to flicker back to life, one by one, illuminating the endless line of standing, drowned figures. They were still, but the water around their feet began to stir, rippling unnaturally. Their hollow eyes, though fixed straight ahead, seemed to hold a flicker of that same green light. From behind them, the wet, dragging sound grew louder. Leo risked a glance back. Silhouetted against the dark opening of the passage they had come from, a figure emerged. It was indistinct, hunched, dripping with water and river grime. It was human-shaped, but its movements were fluid, unnaturally smooth, as if it were moving through water rather than air, and from its form emanated a faint, rhythmic humming, a low, guttural tone that seemed to resonate deep in their bones. "It's catching up!" Maya shrieked, pulling at Ben. They plunged into the dark, flooded tunnel, the water instantly reaching their waists, cold and heavy. Their flashlights cut through the murky depths, revealing more rusted anchors, more spectral figures. The tapping from beneath the water intensified, accompanied by the eerie humming from the figure behind them. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly. Each step through the cold, viscous water was a monumental effort. Leo felt an unseen tug on his ankles, as if something below was trying to pull him down. He glanced back. The figure behind them was gaining, its form growing clearer in the dim green light. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched taut over skeletal features. Its hair floated around its head like dark seaweed, and its eyes were glowing pinpricks of the same sickly green as the lights. It reached out a hand, pale and skeletal, adorned with a crudely formed anchor tattoo that pulsed with the same faint reddish light Leo had seen earlier. And then, as it closed the distance, its voice, the same despairing woman's voice, spoke again, no longer calm but filled with a chilling, boundless hunger. The river never forgets, and it always collects. The skeletal hand, adorned with the glowing anchor tattoo, lunged forward. Leo screamed, scrambling backward through the waist-deep water. Ben, with surprising speed, shoved Maya forward, yelling, "Go, keep going," before turning to face the approaching figure. "Get back!" Ben roared, swinging his flashlight like a club. It connected with the figure's outstretched arm with a sickening crack. The skeletal hand shattered, exploding into a shower of black, algae-covered fragments that dissipated like smoke in the water. The figure recoiled, a low, guttural hiss escaping it, a sound of immense pain and ancient fury. This momentary reprieve was all they needed. Leo grabbed Maya, pulling her desperately through the water towards the faint glimmer of daylight that had to be the entrance grate. The water grew colder, the currents stronger, as if the river itself was fighting their escape. The constant tapping from beneath the water intensified, a furious drumbeat of desperate, grasping fingers. They stumbled upon a small, rusted ladder leading up a narrow shaft, barely visible in the murky light. This was it, their only way out. Ben, limping from his confrontation, pushed Maya up first, then boosted Leo. As Leo scrambled upwards, he heard a terrifying splash behind him. He looked down. The spectral figure had reformed its hand and was now lunging at Ben, its hollow, eyes burning with malevolent green light. "Ben, no!" Leo yelled, but it was too late. The figure wrapped its skeletal arms around Ben, pulling him under the churning water with shocking speed. A final gurgling scream was swallowed by the dark current. The ancient woman's voice echoed through the tunnel, now chillingly triumphant. He resisted. "The current claims him." Leo hauled Maya out of the grate, gasping for breath, soaked and shivering. The city sounds above were a chaotic balm after the subterranean silence. He looked back at the grate, tears stinging his eyes. Ben was gone, swallowed by the river, by whatever unspeakable thing lurked beneath. They never went back to the tunnels. Leo shut down urban echoes, his passion for forgotten city secrets replaced by a consuming horror. Maya struggled with nightmares, waking up screaming about cold water and empty eyes. They moved away from Chicago, seeking solace in a quiet inland town, far from any major body of water. Years passed. The scars on Leo's memory began to fade, replaced by the mundane rhythms of a new life. Maya eventually found peace, her nightmares lessening with time. The only lingering physical reminder was a small, almost imperceptible discoloration on Leo's hand, near his wrist. A faint, reddish mark that, when he looked at it closely in certain lights, resembled a crude, stylized anchor. He dismissed it as a lingering stain, a memory of the grimy tunnel. One scorching summer day, a heat wave gripped their new town. The local park, usually a vibrant green, began to show signs of drought. The grass turned brown, the flowers wilted. Leo found himself drawn to the small, neglected creek that ran through the park, a mere trickle in the dry heat. He saw a few wilting saplings, their leaves drooping. He felt an unfamiliar, almost irresistible urge. He bought a bucket and began to fill it with water from the creek, carefully carrying it to the parched trees. As the cool water soaked into the dry earth, he felt a strange, tingling sensation in his hands, emanating from the faded anchor mark on his wrist. A faint, almost imperceptible humming began, deep within the ground, a familiar rhythm. And then the parched saplings miraculously began to straighten, their leaves perking up, their branches subtly extending. Not with the frantic, demonic speed of Ilara's garden, but with a slow, deliberate vitality. Leo looked at his hand, then at the subtly thriving trees, a dawning horror chilling him to the bone. The water from the creek. It was connected. The humid air, the strange scents, the cold, the whispers, the anchors, the drowned. It wasn't just under Chicago. It was a vast subterranean network of consciousness, an ancient entity that had been forced dormant by the city's construction, but never truly killed. It merely adapted. The anchor wasn't a symbol of a tomb, but of a connection, a way to draw upon and expand its own being. It didn't feed on souls in the river. It absorbed them, their life force, their latent energy, their very essence, and used it to grow. The river was merely its primary artery, a conduit. When Ben had destroyed the hand, he hadn't killed it. He'd merely triggered a deeper, more profound absorption into its network. And Leo, by interacting with that network in the flooded tunnel, by surviving the immediate consumption, had become a carrier. The reddish mark on his wrist wasn't a stain. It was a bud, a living connection to the network, a new anchor point. He was unknowingly helping it spread, carrying its dormant essence, planting it wherever he nurtured life. The river's grip wasn't limited to Chicago. It was a slow, inevitable expansion. a sentient organism that used the very act of care and growth to replicate itself across the unsuspecting land. He hadn't escaped the river. He had become its unwitting current, forever destined to help it flow into new, fertile ground, consuming every drop, every soul in its silent, relentless march. The Chicago River was merely its origin. The entire world was its ultimate destination.